Okay. Well, happy Wednesday. My name is Miriam Lacroix, attorney and founder at Lacroix Law PC, where we give immigrants peace of mind while helping them navigate their path to legal status. So, happy Wednesday. It is time for Wednesday Wisdom, of course. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when when you obtain your green card through your spouse, but you no longer want to be with them, or maybe they no longer want to continue the process, what happens? And the reason why I want to talk about this topic is because I see this a lot in consultations with people who end up becoming my clients later on. They're not exactly sure what's going to happen in the process, but they come to me because they've started the process or they already have their green card and now their marriage has broken down for various reasons. And we'll talk about some of those reasons today. But they're not sure exactly what it is that they can do to either keep the green card that they've already obtained or get their green card, because that was the process that they were in while they were married to their spouse. So, quick disclaimer, as always, this video is just for informational purposes. If you want more information about your particular case, then you can reach out to me on here. You can leave me a message. You can either give me a call at my office. This is our phone number, and I'll put this up a little bit later as well. You can go to our website and write us. There's a lot of ways that you could get in touch with us. So definitely feel free to reach out if you have questions about your specific case, because this is just general information and it should not take the place of actually seeing an attorney about your particular situation. Okay, so what do? You are married to a U.S. citizen, you've started the green card process, or you haven't, and you're realizing that your marriage is falling apart for various different reasons. What should you do? So this really, I guess first I want to say the first thing you do is you don't wait until the last minute, right? If you have started the process, you're in the middle of the process, you're waiting for a response from USCIS, or you have your 2-year green card or something like that, and you know that your marriage is not working out, please do not wait until the last minute. At the moment that you realize that there's an issue, you need to seek the assistance of an immigration attorney to talk to you about your particular case. You don't want to wait till the last minute. Okay, so what do? It really depends on what stage, where you are in the process, right? So here's the first example. Let's say that you are married to a US citizen and you've gone through the entire process. You're done and you've received your green card. One, if it's a 10-year green card, then you're in better shape, right? Because you have a permanent green card. But if it's a 2-year green card, you may run into some trouble. If you or your spouse decide not to reconcile, decide not to stay together past those 2 years, all right? So let's first talk about the difference between a 2-year and a 10-year green card. If you get your 10-year green card, you don't have to do anything with that because you have a permanent green card. If you're married to a U.S. citizen at the time of naturalization or 3 years later, you can naturalize in 3 years. If you're not, you have to wait a little bit longer to that 5-year point. But 10-year green card, pretty much in good shape. If you get a green card that expires in 2 years, that then you have what is called a conditional green card, right? There's a condition on there, and those conditions have to be removed at some point, right? So it expires in 2 years, and you have to remove those conditions. So when do you get a conditional green card? You get that when you've been married for less than 2 years at the time that your green card is issued to you. So if at the time your green card is issued to you, you've been married for 2.5, 3+ years, you'll likely get a 10-year green card. But if at the time your green card is issued to you, you've been married for less than 2 years, you will get what is called a conditional green card. And at that point, you will have to remove those conditions in order to get that permanent green card, that 10-year green card, right? So you remove those conditions within the 90-day period before your second year anniversary of having your green card. So for example, if it expires on January 1st, you have October, November, December, those 3 months to remove those conditions. You file a removal of conditions form. So that's one of the requirements, right? You have to remove the conditions, but the other requirement is that you have to remove the conditions with your spouse, right? And that's what's called the joint filing requirement. You have to file it jointly because USCIS wants to see that you're still together. You know, in your initial interview, you said that you plan to build a life together. They want to make sure that that is what you're doing. So after 2 years, they're going to check up on you and you have to remove those conditions, right? So about this joint filing requirement, there are some waivers to that requirement, right? If your marriage has broken down by those 2 years when it's time for you to remove those conditions, you can get a waiver to that requirement. And so that's really important. And I want people to understand that because a lot of times people come to me for a consultation when this may have happened to them years ago, right? They were married to someone, they had their 2-year green card, and they just never removed the conditions because the marriage didn't work out. So they're like, whatever, I just won't remove the conditions. But if you don't remove the conditions of your green card, there are very serious consequences, right? You are no longer a lawful permanent resident because your green card was only for 2 years. And in one of the cases that I've seen, that person was also sent to immigration court. They were given a notice to appear in court, which he also didn't appear in. So he had quite a few issues, but you don't want to get that far, right? There might be a way to fix it, but you do not want to get that far. So you want to take action immediately. If it's time to remove your conditions, speak to an immigration attorney to see what can be done. So what can be done? So there are 3 or 4, actually, there are 4 different waivers that you can use at this time, right? You can say, look, my marriage to my spouse was in good faith. We planned to be together. We planned to build a life together. It just didn't work out, right? And we got a divorce, right? So that's one waiver, is we got married in good faith and I have this divorce decree here that says that we are no longer married. That is one waiver to the joint filing requirement, right? The second way is same thing. My spouse and I are married in good faith and we planned to build a life together. However, my spouse passed away, right? And so you'd have proof of that with that death certificate. So you'd prove that you were married in good faith and you'd submit that death certificate. And that is another waiver to that joint filing requirement. Another way is same thing. They require good faith. You have to show that you were married in good faith when you applied for your green card initially. And you can also prove that maybe there was abuse or extreme cruelty in your relationship that caused you to separate, that caused maybe it caused your spouse to decide that he or she does not want to attend the removal of conditions interview with you or sign the paperwork, right? You may still be married and living together, but your spouse could be so cruel and trying to harm you in your case, right? So these are things that allow you to file to remove the conditions of your green card without it being jointly with your spouse. And finally, and this one is a little bit harder to meet, but possible, is if you can prove that you would suffer extreme hardship if you were returned to your home country, right? So it's not working out with your spouse, but you don't have the divorce. Your spouse didn't pass away and you don't have battery or extreme cruelty. Then you can go the route of, look, we were married in good faith. It's not working out, but I would really suffer an extreme hardship if I returned to my home country of origin, right? So those are the 4 different waivers, but I want to focus a little bit more on abuse or battery, extreme cruelty. A lot of times people assume that domestic violence is only physical. And that is not the case. And I filed a lot of cases like this where the battery extreme cruelty case had nothing to do with abuse, right? It wouldn't be battery, it would be extreme cruelty. But it's not always about abuse. Sometimes it's mental or emotional abuse, right? You want to ask yourself, does your spouse treat you poorly? Does your spouse try to control you? Does your spouse hold your immigration status over your head, right? These are things that are textbook cases for extreme cruelty when you want to use that as a waiver for the joint filing requirement. Okay, so just generally, all of that we were talking about, if you already had your green card and you have a 2-year or conditional green card, what you should do, right? And the answer to that is you may very well have a waiver available to you, but you do not want to wait until the last minute, because you are supposed to remove the conditions of your green card within 90 days before your 2-year anniversary. Now, some of these waivers may allow for you to apply to remove your conditions later on if you're using one of these waivers. So that's a possibility, but you still want to take action and, move forward. Okay. Now, let's look at a different scenario, right? Let's say you're married to a U.S. citizen like before, but you are currently going through the process, right? So you haven't submitted anything, or you've submitted something, but you're still waiting on an answer from USCIS. You haven't had an interview yet. You haven't had any approval notices yet. You're just sort of going through the process, and you're realizing that your relationship is not working out. There are still options for you there as well. Okay. You don't want to assume that because your marriage isn't working out, that you also will not be able to get your green card in a situation, because that is simply not true. I've worked with many clients who have started the process for their green card, and unfortunately, they have not actually weren't able to continue with their spouse, usually because of abuse or extreme cruelty by their spouse. I have a question. What happens if you haven't gotten your green card yet, but your spouse is no longer wants to continue the process after an interview has already been done? That's a great question, Plunkett. I think that's exactly what I'm talking about now, right? I've seen this scenario many times. And if you were to meet with me, I would ask you, what is going on in your relationship, and why your spouse has decided that he or she no longer wants to continue the process after they've already gone through the interview, right? Because what can happen now for you is that even though the interview is done, if you haven't gotten an answer about the interview, if you've gotten approved for your green card, or if you're sort of waiting to see if you were approved, it's possible that you could be asked to attend a second interview, right? And that would be an issue if your spouse no longer wants to continue with the process. And so I'd want to know more about your relationship and what's happened and why it's broken down and why your spouse has decided not to move forward with you. If you've already gotten your green card, then it depends on if you have a 2-year or a 10-year green card, and you can refer to what we talked about earlier. But yeah, I think that's a great question. And so if you're going through the process and your spouse no longer wants to continue, sometimes that's a sign of extreme cruelty, right? Your spouse is holding something over you. Your spouse could be telling you that, well, if you don't do this for me, if you're not going to be this type of spouse for me, then I'm not going to help you get your green card, right? This is how they're trying to control you and control the situation. And it's very possible. It's very possible that that could be happening. And so Plunkett, and for anyone else in similar situations, I definitely recommend that you speak with, at least have a consultation with an immigration attorney to determine if there are other options available to you. Because if you're waiting for another interview to happen at some point and your spouse won't show up, you want to have representation there. You want to explain what's going on. Maybe you're going to apply for what is called the self-petition. And that is what I was talking about earlier. If you have not finished the process and you haven't gotten your green card yet, and you're married to a US citizen, and it's not going well because your spouse is either physically, mentally, emotionally abusive to you, controlling with money, controlling with your time, holding your immigration status over you, making you do things for them that you don't want to do. If that's the case, then you can petition for yourself, right? It's called a self-petition. And so normally how it works is that your spouse petitions for you or your family member petitions for you, right? Normally how immigration works is that you can't just petition for yourself. But in this very unique circumstance, you can petition for yourself if you are married to a US citizen and you are experiencing abuse or extreme cruelty by that US citizen, because the idea behind it is that USCIS does not want to see you stay in a relationship just because you are undocumented or just because your status is about to expire, right? They want you to be in a safe situation no matter what. And so a lot of times people do stay in these relationships because they're just not sure what to do. And oftentimes their spouse lets them know that, hey, you can't do anything anyway, right? You're undocumented. Are you going to call the police? You're not, because you're afraid that they're going to know that you're undocumented. And so that is all considered extreme cruelty. And I have been taking these cases on for the past 5 years. And there are so many different types of scenarios that make someone eligible for a self-petition and also make someone eligible to remove the conditions of their green card without filing jointly with their spouse. And so that's what today's Wednesday Wisdom is about. It's about being able to get through this process, even though you and your spouse are no longer together or are no longer working out, right? Because a lot of the times it's no longer working out because one spouse could be harmful or cruel to the other. And if that's not the case, maybe there's something else, another option that could be available to you. It depends on your circumstance. But you definitely want to speak with an attorney if this is your situation, right? So the two situations are, one, you have your green card, a 2-year green card, a conditional green card, and you have to remove the conditions on your green card, but you and your spouse are no longer together, right? And so recap, you have to file with your spouse to remove the conditions on your green card, but there's waivers available for that, right? So if you're divorced, or if your spouse has passed away, or if you have been a victim of abuse or extreme cruelty at the hands of your spouse, there's a waiver so that you don't have to jointly file with your spouse to remove those conditions. But then also, second scenario, if you don't have your green card yet, but you are married to a US citizen, and you've experienced abuse or extreme cruelty at the hands of that spouse, you can then petition for yourself, and it's called the self-petition. And so I think talking about this a lot more often is really important. And so I'm here to answer any questions that people have about this topic. I'm very grateful for your question, Plunkett. And if you need any additional help, feel free to reach out to me by direct message. Also, I'll put my number up here again so that people who are watching this on the replay, watching the recording, they can actually see my phone number and give me a call whenever they feel ready to. So I am going to leave you all with that. If there are no other questions, I really appreciate people who have joined me today. Let's see. I'm actually streaming on Facebook and on YouTube. So I'm trying to see where people are if asking questions. Oh, okay. Where are you located? So I am located in New York. I work in Westchester, New York, and I also work in Brooklyn. I have 2 locations where I meet with clients. However, as an immigration attorney, I can work with clients anywhere, all over the globe. I also have clients who are actually out of the country, right? I have clients in Haiti, and I had a client in California, I have clients in Connecticut, New Jersey, outside of New York. And so just because you live somewhere outside of New York, it doesn't mean I can't help you. We have the resources and the technology in my firm now, especially during COVID, so that we can work with people all over. And so we use WhatsApp, we use Zoom. Of course, I text with my clients, I talk with them over the phone. However you'd like to be communicated with, we communicate with you that way. And we can help people everywhere. So I'm located in New York. It's where my offices are, but I am happy to help people everywhere. Thank you for your question. Let's see if I can see if anyone on YouTube has asked a question before I guess I won't be able to, but not sure. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay. Well, thank you for everyone who's watched today. If you have any questions about this topic or any other topic, I'm more than happy to. You're welcome. No problem. I will be doing lives every Wednesday. I'm trying to keep them at 3 p.m. So if they're not at 3, I usually post about it ahead of time so you'll know what time it is. But the plan is to go live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. So tell your friends, tell your family if they have questions. I'm happy to answer them here. I can't answer very specific questions to people's specific circumstances because I might need more information. But general questions, I'm more than happy to answer for you all. Okay. So I hope everyone has a great rest of their afternoon. I should be seeing everyone again next Wednesday. And if you don't catch me live, I want to wish you very happy holidays. Have a good one.